What is up, Omni athletes? Today's episode of Omni Athlete is brought to you by Wild Zora Foods. So if you are an athlete who believes in training the entire athletic life cycle, training, performance, recovery, and transition, and you look at sport through that lens of body, mind, and spirit like we do, because you're here to elevate your state of consciousness and global consciousness through sport, then you know how you fuel your body affects every single cell in your body and every single ounce of energy in your being. So we're not just talking about the physical being, we're talking about the mental and emotional and spiritual bodies too. What you put into your body matters. That's why we partnered with Wild Zora. They produce the most incredible meat and vegetable snack bars that I have ever tasted in my life. All that is in these bars, it's absolutely incredible, is organic free-range meat and organic vegetables, right? Organic grass-fed free-range meat and vegetables. That's it. There's no added sugar. There's no added preservatives. The sugar in it is from the vegetables and the dates that they actually put in the bars. They're made in our backyard here in Loveland, Colorado. The founders, Josh and Zora, absolutely rock. We love these guys. It's an incredibly authentic partnership because we actually use the products. Heidi and I love their bars. You can routinely see me walking around Fort Collins with a stack of Wild Zora bars in my backpack. In fact, I'm out right now. So as soon as I get done right here recording this, I'm probably going to go get some and make sure that they're back in my backpack. For the month of April, Wild Zora is offering the entire Omni athlete community 30% off any product that they offer. At checkout, just put in the code TEAMOMNI30, 30% off everything. And any of you athletes out there who are not meat lovers, maybe you're feeling yourself completely vegetarian, or maybe you're just not a huge fan of meat as an in-between snack on the go for your fuel, they also have vegetarian options for you too. They've got meals to go and just an entire range of products that serve you and that serve the entire athletic life cycle, whether you're a meatitarian, vegetarian, or something in between. So go check them out, wildzora.com. At checkout, put in the code TEAMOMNI30 and you can get 30% off anything, everything. Check it out. We love these guys. We want to see you support them because they're supporting us and support the mission of Omni Athlete, which is to bring higher consciousness into sport. Now, let's dive into today's episode of Omni Athlete. Welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. You believe that you can be more, and so do we. We created this show and company to do it with you by empowering your performance with the wisdom and techniques of the world's highest achieving mind, body, and spirit competitors. Okay, so today's guest is an academically trained biophysicist, author, Zen Master, coach, and fifth degree black belt in Aikido who has dedicated her life to developing leaders. She has worked with leaders at behemoth companies like Dell, Merck, T. Rowe Price, and Sprint. She received NASA's Exceptional Service Medal for her work as the Deputy Manager for integrating the International Space Station. As the President of the Institute for Zen Leadership and President of Focus Leadership, she has trained leaders across the globe to balance their energies, embody peak performance, and match agile walk with authentic talk. It's my pleasure to introduce to Omni Athlete, Dr. Ginny Whitelaw. Welcome to the show, Ginny.
Thank you so much. You did your homework.
You know, the intro is one of the most energizing parts, writing these intros to doing these interviews, because I really get a chance to dive into your world. And there's a lot of places that it feels like we could start this interview. I actually would love to start with fear. And first and foremost, where does just the topic of fear take you? And we can dive down some different rabbit holes.
Wow. What a place to start, because it was fear, interestingly, that initially took me into martial arts. I was taking night classes in college, and women at my campus were being attacked. And so I said, I need to take care of myself. And I started in martial arts. And initially it was for self-defense, so you could say that was fear-based. And yet over the years, I went from college to graduate school and then met a world-class Aikido teacher, Toyota Sensei, who just pulled more out of me than I ever imagined possible. And he said at some point in my training, if you want to reach the peak of your game, you have to start meditating. So by this point in time, it's no longer about fear. It's about a kind of development that's going on. And what he was talking about with meditation was he also trained in Zen, and we were associated with a Zen dojo, a Zen temple in Hawaii that had a phenomenal set of Zen teachers. So I started training in Zen. And what I learned in that training was sort of where fear is based. Fear being based in a self-protecting self, fear being based in, you know, am I going to get my needs met? You know, am I good enough, smart enough, loved enough, performing enough, enough, and Zen takes it takes aim at seeing through that, I'll call it illusion of separateness or that delusional self. So it really targets fear in a very unique way.
So fear is a topic I wanted to start with because I think we as athletes have a hard time labeling fear for what it is at times and identifying, just as you pointed out right there, where fear comes from. So we may be struggling, martial arts is such a beautiful metaphor, right? We might be struggling with a particular kata. And for whatever reason, either the movement itself is feeling challenging or the particular understanding, the application, whatever it may be, is just not gelling. And so often that can come from fear, yet we don't connect the dot of what I'm feeling right now is related to something as primal as fear.
That's right. It's so true because the fear can be deeply embedded in the physical body. So I shy away from something instead of entering. Something's holding back. But if I don't trace it, it's going to stay there. If I don't somehow work with it. And as you pointed out, Josh, and it's so true, if we sort of just put it out of the mind, run past the moment, don't really think about it, I'm just not so good at that or whatever, then it's going to stay there. But if we trace the roots of fear and really probe what is going on, we always find it relates to basic Maslowian needs, about safety, security, love, belonging, personal power, actualization, and not getting those met. So and ultimately it rests in life and death. And the ego can take a front or take fear in thinking anything that's not in its interest could be death. Even like in leadership, you see in how people will get so upset when they get called out in an organization or somebody says you didn't do a good job, or they even get layered organizationally. It's someone they used to report to now, oh no, they're a click down and there's all this fear in the land. You think, how could the ego get so upset over such a small matter? But the ego just has kind of a thumbs up, thumbs down measure for things. And if this isn't in my interest, it feels like a little death. And it's, from a nervous system honed from hundreds of thousands of years on the savannah, it's sort of like, if this is not for me, it's against me. And a fear percolates that then gets stored in the body. And if we don't deal with it, it creates a memory or, something in there that then we go to do something and suddenly it gets triggered.
So, Ginny, you had this incredible experience of integrating, if I'm not mistaken, 42 different teams when you were working at NASA, right? In 42 different teams, 42 different congressional districts. Internet, like you were integrating just extreme complexity. And I think about that in a coaching term or in a coaching lens for sport. And as we climb the levels of competition, oftentimes, especially in team sports, the layers of complexity as a leader, as a coach, gain, right? We take on more and more complexity. What were some of the aspects of your martial arts training that allowed you to more easily integrate those different teams and that complexity?
Oh, wow. You ask great questions, Josh, because it was really seeing that complexity in the NASA context and then also running a dojo, which I was doing by night, and seeing that contrast that was really, it ultimately changed the direction of my life, because what I could see is that the condition in the workplace, people were getting very stressed out and run down and kind of burnt out. We were working long hours. We were redesigning the space station faster than we could agree on what we were building. Now, when you think about that for a few minutes, you realize that's an unstable system. And so people were kind of always like this. And you're mentioning all the different contractor teams and agencies and spread across, that we were trying to integrate. What I could see as I was integrating all the flight and ground data systems and then ultimately the entire program, I could see we weren't going to pull it together this way. Something had to change. And we had to develop, much as you would in sports, a much more integrated team approach. We could not keep doing this with a sense of everyone in their own silo and everyone with their own interests. It was just not going to happen. And at the same time, I'm training the dojo, and I'm seeing that the kind of deep physical training that people go through in the dojo, where they're becoming more resilient, more centered, more able to work with one another, because in the art of Aikido, you're always working with other people and extending and redirecting and harmonizing energy. But without losing your power, you're really cultivating power through this kind of use of energy. I could see this would help leaders. This would help the workplace so much. So it just started gnawing on me that how to bring this deep training of the dojo into the world of work. And as I said, that's what changed my life back in the, mid to early 90s, where I said, I've got to start working with leadership.
This notion, so Aikido, my martial art background is in Kung Fu. And one of the things that I always revered about Aikido from afar, not having done much training myself, is the grace and the power through grace that I perceive is really embedded deep within just the framework of the art. And, this season of Omni Athlete is about grace and grit. That's our theme. And what I would love to hear from you as a leader and as somebody who has worked to help leaders develop and really connect to that authentic and that balanced energy. What is the power that you can draw from grace? Because sometimes I think we see those as opposing or opposite forces rather than maybe halves of the same whole.
Yeah. When you started talking about grace and grace and grit, I'm thinking the opposite of graceful is awkward, when things are awkward.
Yeah.
And when things are awkward, it means we're running into ourselves. We're in the way. We're not in the flow. It's not coming together. So in Aikido, we say, well, you use the energy of an attack to take the person off balance. You're harmonizing the energy. So when you're creating that kind of redirecting of energy, if it's graceful, then you've really aligned the energy forces. You're really able to move harmoniously with someone. But what you're really doing is connecting with universal energy. You're just tapping into universal energy and getting yourself out of the way. So what drops away is the awkwardness, and what's left is the grace. And when you look at like how a flock of birds flies, they're never awkward, unless somebody broke their wing, but if they're healthy birds, they're never awkward because there's just a naturalness to how they move. But when you watch human beings, we're often awkward because we second guess ourselves, we stutter step, we get lost in our head, we have the fear, all these things that create us in our way. We become our own worst enemy, versus when we're able to just drop that tension, drop that holding, and move harmoniously, the grace emerges.
Can you speak a little bit to the different energies, and I'm referencing specifically the 4 different energies that you talk about in your book, Move to Greatness, but the different energies that we may experience on a day-to-day basis, whether they're strong or weak for us?
Yeah, this fascinated me because one of the things you learn in martial arts is the way you train the body changes the mind. I mean, that's why we can use martial arts to train the body, to train the mind, and how it becomes a character development. And I really wanted to write about this and show again how this deep physical training could help people in their daily lives. And I wrote a book called Body Learning back in the 90s that I don't recommend to people. Don't run out and buy it. But it was the best thing about that book is that I met Elizabeth Wetzig, who taught me about these 4 patterns in the nervous system. And she hadn't made them up either. These patterns had been known since the 1930s as basically ways in which, or the order in which, nerves fire muscles. Now, as a biophysicist, I was fascinated by this because I had studied the developing nervous system, but it never occurred to me that there were large-scale patterns in the nervous system that would regulate and connect to factors of personality. But there are. And initially, they were discovered as patterns of movement. And just to give an example, so you listening and viewing can get a sense, if you just flex your arm, a simple movement like this has to be regulated by opposing muscle groups because we need kind of an engine. Muscles only shorten as they fire. So we need an engine to create the flex, and we need a brake so I don't hit myself. So we have a kind of coordination going on between agonist and antagonist, or we might say engine and brake. Very simple. All of our movements are related this way, where we have opposing muscle groups that have to coordinate in how they do things. And there are 4 basic ways that these two things can work. Basically, we can put on the brakes and then gun the engine where we're working against a lot of resistance. I mean, the way that I don't know, a runner might start at a stop where you're just ready, you're like shot from a cannon as you burst away. Or the way a car racer might start, where they've got their foot on the brake, they're gunning the engine, they release the brake and boom. Well, that pattern is hugely attenuating of energy. It focuses like a laser beam, and we call it the driver. It gets to the point, it's sharp and direct. And when we work in this pattern, we do things fast, we talk fast, like I'm talking right now, and it's right to the point. Contrast that with its physiological opposite, which is much more visionary, like the energy of where the extensor side goes first. You're not even using the brake at all until the very end. And you've got big peripheral view. You've got expansion, extension. You've got a sense of being out in nature and oneness, a big open feeling. And in between, there are 2 other patterns where we are using engine and brake in a very precise way to hold form, we call the organizer, or in an alternating way that is very rhythmic and engaging of people, but also very useful in sports because it has a very resilient pattern that we call the collaborator. So these patterns, driver, organizer, collaborator, visionary, they are correlated with dominant factors of human personality and movement. And what's the magic of making those connections? When you make something physical, you make it trainable. So at last, we have a personality model that connects into the body. So and this is where I work with leaders so much, because there's lots of personality tests out there, but they all stop at the neck. And when you stop at the neck, you can get an assessment of, well, these are your preferences. This is what you do. You're more introverted or extroverted, or you like to judge, and this one likes to perceive or think or feel or whatever.
Right.
But then what do you do about that? Especially if the situation calls for something that's kind of awkward for you. What do you do? But when you work with these patterns in the nervous system, you can self-regulate. You can make shifts. You can shift between them because we all have all 4, but just like we're handed, left or right, we have preferences. And those preferences are in our physical body. So we can access all 4, but we can also cultivate any pattern that initially is a little awkward for us. We can build grace in it by practice.
So what was so energizing to me as I learned about these different patterns, number one is that they are from the body, right? They're from the body out, they're from the body up, which you're right, is such a contrast to how we perceive and try to assess and analyze how to move about in the world, right? It's so even for in the world of sports right now, there is such a focus on metrics, on understanding the data and understanding the ability for us to quantify different pieces of athletic performance, which is incredible. And also often leaves us only at the head up, right? It doesn't actually get into the body. And I think about for athletes, those 4 patterns of energy are so represented within an individual athlete's performance. I can think of athletes off the top of my head that are drivers. I can think of athletes that are visionaries and that move in the same way, when it comes to a visionary, somebody who may move with almost, it would appear a reckless abandon, but it's truly just a flow, right? Versus somebody who's just going to charge or be as precise as possible. What got me excited is thinking about coaching and being able to finally map a model of understanding personality that I can take directly to the field of performance and say, this may help you perform more naturally, authentically, or we need to shift this direction.
That's right. It's a very powerful tool. And that was really a direction where Betsy Wetzig initially took it. She was a choreographer and a dancer. Oh, wow. And for her, the light bulbs went on watching her dancers because she could see exactly what you were saying, how their moves correlated to their personality. And if she had to get a bunch of people doing the same kind of dance, how she had to shift them, and what they had to work on to get there. Right.
As you think about how you coach and work with leaders, what is it that you've seen that typically impedes their ability to connect to that joy, even when it is hard, even when it is challenging?
Fear. I mean, it's right where we started. It's fear.
Yeah.
And tolerance for that distress and difficulty. And here's the challenge. Leaders, a lot of the leaders I work with, they have pretty good lives. They've made it up pretty high in a company. It's all kind of going well. Well, maybe not totally well. Maybe their health isn't so good. Something's not right here. But, they can always kind of talk themselves into it's sort of okay.
Yeah.
So they're not in a desperate situation unless they have the incredibly high standards of, say, an Omni athlete, right? So if they have these incredibly high standards, then they'll push themselves. But if it's sort of like, it's okay, this is good enough, then the fear can hold them back. Why take this risk? Why take this chance? Why put myself out there? And again, probing those fears, unraveling them, going beyond just the surface of our conflict triggers. Like, I don't like people who are abrasive, or that jerk in the corner office, angered me. Going beyond our triggers where we export them into the relationships of our life, and then coming back in here to say, what is this really about for me? Why did I make this about me? What am I afraid may be true about me? That kind of work people will do when they want to break through something, but they don't do it if they'll be satisfied for good enoughness. So if we're trying to get through, we might stop. If we're trying to break through, we're going to keep going.
Ginny, this has been absolutely incredible. Before I ask my final question, where can these guys go to connect with you online?
Well, the zenleader.global. Zenleader.global is our website at the Institute for Zen Leadership. And it's and we have programs in Zen leadership with people can get a full immersion into how this kind of physical training can support them in life.
So this show is called Omni Athlete because we want to understand what it takes to be the ultimate body, mind, and spirit competitor. The final question of the show is, what does it mean to you to be an Omni athlete?
Transcend competition. Hey, what does it mean? Omni means all. So how can you be so big that you're in all directions? That state all at once, that samadhi state all at once, then you're beyond winning and losing. And and then you can start to probe the level of how do you use this performance, these gifts, this self in service of this world.
Wow. Ginny, thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, go dive deep into Ginny's world, and in particular, dive into this framework of energies and patterns and what it takes to really be authentic externally and how that maps internally to who we are as human beings. As athletes, we go through so many challenges on the field, off the field, that often we search for answers that are always inside of us. And one of the most energizing parts of Ginny's work, whether you're a leader in sport or just a leader in life, is that we always have the answer. We just need new frameworks, new perspectives, new opportunities to connect with it. And that is abundantly clear through Ginny's work and through the work she brings to the world. So go check out her website, dive deep into any and all of her books. And until next time, thank you guys for watching this episode of Omni Athlete. Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for watching another episode of Omni Athlete. Please, please, please go like and subscribe to our podcast. That is our goal right now, is just to build this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help to do it. So like and subscribe, share our content, guys. If this content adds any value to your world, that helps you perform, connect, go deeper, go wider, whatever it is that it does for you, if it provides value, all we ask is that you share our content and help grow this community. We can't accomplish our goal of elevating global consciousness through sport without you. You are an integral part of this mission and this purpose, and we need your help. So please go like, subscribe, and share our content, and continue to help us build and grow this community that is truly motivated to not just elevate consciousness, but elevate and shift the very culture of sport so that we can truly experience the athletic experience in a brand new and energizing way for so many people, guys. So thank you, and please like and subscribe. Until next time.